Greetings everybody, my name is Tommy the Game Master and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be taking a look at Hyperdimensional Neptunia Rebirth 2. It's been a while since I played the original Rebirth, but since then I have played several spin-offs, and even though I played through Victory 2, in my opinion of the series has been a mixed bag. Some are really good and really fun like Victory 2, and others are somewhat easily broken pieces of crap in my book, while others fall in the good but merely average territory. So how does Rebirth 2 stack up, since I hear this is a lot of fans' favorite game? Well, let's find out. Alright, let's get everything bad out of the way when it comes to the story and presentation. For all the new players who are just investigating the Neptunia series, yes, it does have way too much moe in it. And yes, it does have a lot of fan service. And when it comes to the fan service, this is actually one of the better games of the series of not passing the line of the cute cheesecake into anime pedophilia. Although there are times where it does come close, and I can understand why the original PS3 version is the only game in the series to get a full M rating from the ESRB. But if you can look past the cheesecake, there's actually a great story with some fun characters and a lot of really biting satire. I also wasn't sure how much I would like the story, since Neptune isn't the main leader character in this one, and when she's dropped to second fiddle in the game's narratives, it can really suffer for it. That said, Nepgear does a decent job of picking up the slack, as she's a likable enough character and there is just enough craziness going on in the game's narrative for plenty of humor and some really biting satire. A good example of this, and one of my favorite jokes, while they're over in a country called Leanbox that is supposed to represent the Microsoft brand, one of the characters tells Nepgear that there is an underground resistance movement supporting her, and they have a surprisingly high number of support among the population. What is that group's acronym? It's the RROD. Anyone who has ever owned the original model Xbox 360 knows what that actually means, and why Microsoft might need some cold water and some ointment because they just got burned. And the game is just full of these types of jokes and references. So what is the main plot? Well, the game does not continue off where the original Rebirth 1, which happens, I guess, in something called the Super Dimension, but rather in another dimension known as the Hyperdimension. Yes, folks, trying to follow the Neptune storyline is almost as difficult as Kingdom Hearts. With that said, the convolution is actually meant to help the players and the storytellers by keeping the story simple, to where if you missed out on a chapter of the series, you're not completely lost if you haven't played the others. Anyways, the game opens up with the 4 CPUs getting the crap kicked out of them, plus one of the new characters, Nepgear, who's also there, ends up getting defeated. 3 years passed, and the R4 Criminal Syndicate, ASCI, now is on the verge of ruling all the game industry using pirating to bring back the deity of sin, which is also called DOS. Yeah, I see what you did there. Anybody who knows old computer terms know what you did there, Idea Factory. IF and Kappa are exploring the game industry graveyard, and they encounter what's left of the 4 goddesses, and after a fan service bondage scene, they do manage on bringing Nepgear out of there. Now it's up to Nepgear to bring together the other CPU candidates, which are 4 fledgling goddesses that represent portable handheld systems, as well as each country's mascots, so they can save their sisters. And now, before you get excited, there's no Mario, Sonic, or Crash references. These mascots are just discs, which I found out to be a very missed opportunity at some really great comic jabs at the mascots icons of each particular consoles. I thought that was a missed opportunity. Why they didn't take them, I don't know, other than probably being afraid of copyright claims. Another problem I have with the game is its overall commentary on piracy. Let me get this started. Their approach is noble. As someone who likes to purchase his entertainment whenever he can and understand the economic concept, as there is no such thing as a free lunch, and how much that concept is lost on people who are younger than me, I understand and even appreciate what they're trying to do here and weave the moral of that into the story. Almost every freaking time there is a classic console release or some upcoming game pack filled with retro games being announced, there's always at least one person on those boards telling everyone who's excited they're an idiot because they can download those games for free off the internet. And I really do hate these people because they're assuming because it's an older game they have a right to it, and they don't. The publisher is putting it up for purchase, usually at a reasonable price that most people can afford, and they still have the copyright on that game. Therefore, they have the right to sell it and expect people to give them money for it, even if it is 30 years old. Now, if it just ended there that piracy is stealing, and if you steal a new game digitally, it's just as bad as if you walked out of a game store with a physical copy, I would say good job. But they paint with a broad brush. You like copy devices? You like emulations? You like watching videos on YouTube? Then you're just as bad as a pirate. And I would say, no you're not. Not if you're using it in the right way. People, at least in the USA, have the right to make backups of their old cards. Back to those message boards, there are a lot of other people who say, not buying it because I've had the original since I was a kid and I just emulate it. That is actually legal in the USA to have a digital backup, and it's oftentimes far easier to play those older cartridges with an emulator than on an actual console hardware. As long as you have a legal copy of the original game, you're good to go. Televisions have changed. Getting old game consoles to hook up on modern day TVs are harder. As far as copying games because of DRM, another thing that the game throws a few lines to, I actually say that's actually a legitimate reason to want a pirated version. Whenever you have a game like Assassin's Creed Origins, which actually broke computers, not because the game itself is too cumbersome to run, but because the 4 or 5 layers of DRM that Ubisoft put on it actually took more resources than the game took, and it can even damage computers, then the publishers and developers are no longer anti-pirate, but they're now anti-consumer. Plenty of people, again, I have seen on board say, I want to go out and purchase the game from a legitimate storefront so I can have a legal copy, but I'm getting myself a cracked version so I don't have to put up with the DRM that slows down my computer. So again, Idea Factory and Compile Hearts, it's a good lesson you try to put in your game, but you went too far, and I'm afraid it's going to fall on deaf ears because of that, especially here stateside. Anyways, I enjoyed the game with the exception of some of the tone deaf preaching, and while I am for trying to get that lesson across, kids, if something's for sale, you need to purchase it. But there are legitimate reasons for things like copy devices and emulations that are legal, at least here in the United States. So what is the gameplay like? Well, first I have a confession to make. While I don't remember purchasing a piece of DLC, whether I bought the package with it or not, I quickly discovered I had this sword from the anime. Kind of surprising since it's only in the last episode and it's only in it for like 30 seconds. Anyways, this was kind of like getting the ultimate weapon from the get-go. And yes, I did use it for the majority of the run through the game, making it much easier to get through the game than, say, by grinding levels and purchasing and crafting new weapons. And this is important because the original game did have a few problems with the balancing of boss fights. There were several times where I was breezing through the standard grunt enemy of the areas, only to get hit hard by the boss and have them one-hit KO me, and then required me to grind for several hours on areas where the enemies were kind of weak, and I was getting frustrated. While I did notice that my other characters were usually able to survive and put up a fight next to Nepgear, the fact that she could rip anything to pieces in a few shots most of the time does make me a poor judge on if they improved the balancing issues or not. At any rate, this game is for the most part very similar to the original Rebirth in its layout and battle system. Pick an area by the main menu, explore the area, trigger event scenes, fight bosses, and continue on. Need to grind? There are side quests that you can pick up in each city's guilds plus plenty of conversations to be had in each city that can lead to either funny jokes and satirical stings or lead to important items. As far as battles themselves, well, the amount of characters allowed in battle has been increased to 4, and that extra character helps out a lot on strategy. Not to mention there are team-up attacks and switch moves you can do that really make the battle go by easier and a lot faster. As far as some of my usual nitpicks with the Neptunia games when it comes to repeated areas and too many repeated enemy designs, the problems are still there. They're not as bad as they were in the original Rebirth, but they're still there. The virtual forest, which is repeated 3 times, is at least a newer version, and each of the repeats have some very small differences, but for the most part, they're the same. The warehouse that's featured in pretty much all of them, of course, makes a return at least twice. That said, the game is a bit shorter than the original, only topping out around 17 hours, and the normal ending feels a bit weak when it comes to the final boss fight, as you basically just fight R4 in her giant monster form. Kind of disappointing considering how many times she's in the other games, being kind of a really comic foil to Neptune as the antagonist, that she's just basically a giant monster here. Graphically, the game is about par with the first Rebirth game. There are a few cutscenes that look like they come straight out of a PS2 game, but for the most part the cutscenes are done in this graphical novel style that I actually like and fits the tone of the story pretty well. The areas are okay looking, but they're nothing eye-catching, and again, a lot of things really do repeat. That said, the characters of the little sisters I always found to be better designs than the original 4 goddesses, from Uni having a back of a PSP on her dress, to the fact that Rom and Ram's color schemes are usually the same color Nintendo likes to sell their portable DS models for the first few years. All of this stuff is just really clever. So I do enjoy the graphics despite the repeats. Well, nothing really good in the music department. The music in these games always sounded okay to me, but they're nothing really epic. Voice acting, though, we do have the standard actors here, and they all do a really good job. We're talking Kate Higgins, Melissa Fawn, Stephanie Shea. If you watched any anime over the last 10 years in the English dub, you've heard these voices before, and they do a really great job here.
Wouldn't that make you just one of their expendable underlings?
Definitely an underling. Miss Underling is definitely an underling.
What? Where the hell do you get off calling me an underling, huh?
So what are my final thoughts on Hyperdimensional Neptunia Rebirth 2? For the most part, I actually enjoyed the game. If you can find it on a Steam sale for less than $10, it's definitely worth the pickup. It's got some decent jokes. The battle system's been improved somewhat. That said, the fact that I got a sword really early on in the game that completely broke the game does kind of make my opinions on some of the refinements that needed to happen from Rebirth 1, so I can't really give you my opinion, other than the fact that they did add in an extra member, hopefully making it easier. For the most part, though, it's the same graphics, even some repeated dungeons. Again, Idea Factory makes these RPGs a bit on the cheap side. If you're looking for an excellent JRPG gameplay-wise, you're not exactly going to find it here. But if you're looking for a comical farce and something that does poke fun of a lot of Japanese games and anime, you can't do wrong by going with the Hyperdimensional Neptunia series. Well, folks, that's it for today. If you have any comments, feel free to leave them down below. I'll see you guys next time.